Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of the Viking Chats podcast, and I'm joined today by none other than Dr. Neil Cobbold, or Mr. PayProp, as I think most of us would know. Neil?
I'm not used to the doctor yet.
No, listen, I've got to be honest, neither am I, mate. I've seen that in a couple of your some of your guest appearances, and I'm like, he never told me about the doctor bit. So, yeah, you know, after we finish this chat, I've got something on my back.
Funnily enough, all my mates have done exactly the same joke. I can't help with that.
Okay, so, well, let's start with the doctor. What are you a doctor of?
So it's a doctor of business, and my thesis was around change management and how it can be developed for small businesses. A lot of change management when I was coming through, and I love change, and I love the whole how do you get the stakeholders and everybody behind, but all the principles seem to be built for large manufacturing companies that had then been moved.
So when was this? When did you become a doctor?
September 2024.
Oh, right, so proper recent.
It is very recent.
It wasn't a title that you just kind of humbly left off, and now you're like, that's right.
For some reason, I decided, while also running PayProp and doing a full-time career and being a husband and a sometimes vacant dad, that doing a doctorate was a right move to do. Took just over 5 years.
Wow.
And a lot more writing than I think I've ever done in my life.
And was it just something that you personally, that was kind of one of these things on your kind of wish list of things you wanted to do? Or?
No, never. So I did my MBA, and I did it with the university, and my dissertation then was around this same change principle, and I sort of alluded to the fact of I liked this Japanese principle called Kaizen.
Yeah.
Constant improvement.
Constant, yeah.
And for small businesses...
the pursuit of elegance?
That's it, the pursuit of elegance. And
I read occasionally, guys. This might shock some of you, but
I actually, if you look at a lot of that, and you look at how a lot of people run small businesses, without even realising it, we adopt Kaizen.
Yeah.
We unfortunately then become complacent.
Yes.
About 6 months to a year in, we forget what made you successful.
You start getting some turnover, you start making a bit of money, and you forget about that refinement, that elegance.
Yeah, and if you went back, even after having like a business you've had for as long as you had, and treated this business as if you had no money, the same desire that you had to drive it, to make those changes, would you do all the processes that you do now? Or would you actually look at tightening them? Would you find ways to improve, ways to save? Or more importantly, would your staff, who are now those same people with that hunger, find that? So that was the principle around my dissertation. There was nothing in the university that I attended in their library, so they actually came and offered it me. And I laughed the first time they offered it me. I thought, no, I'm not doing a doctorate. That sounds ridiculous. But then they came back and said, we'll give you a fully funded.
Nice, thank you very much.
Which, in principle, sounded like that. I should have read the small print. Because about 3 years in, I was like, maybe I've bitten off more than I can chew here. But in the small print, if I cancelled, I had to pay back anything.
Oh, well,
and it's about 20,000 a year.
Yeah.
To do a doctorate.
So there you go. They got you.
So they had me by the short
fair play
curves,
to them, I think, quite frankly. I probably would have had a similar clause if it had been me. So
85,000 words later, not including bibliography and appendix and summary foreword, it was done and submitted. And
where can we get our hands on this light-hearted, jovial read?
So it's actually in the University of Hertfordshire. It's on their library. It's a change management article done by, as it is now, Dr.
Neil Cobbold.
Yeah, and will probably be used for future people for their...
Dude, that's awesome. I think that's super cool. Because like I said, I saw Doctor appear on your name a couple of times recently, and I was like, he kept that fucking quiet. That's not like people in our industry. We're pretty quick to be like, by the way, it's Doctor. There's not a lot of them in our industry, to be fair. I struggle with that.
I do some panels now, and they say, now it's time for Dr. Neil Cobbold, and I'm looking around. When's he arriving?
My dad. So, obviously, look, everyone knows you, like I said, Mr. PayProp, the PayProp days. What came before PayProp? What was that pre-PayProp? I mean, I don't need your entire life story, but
I will go back a little bit just to kind of show. So I became an estate agent while I was still at uni.
Yeah.
I had a full-time job running a nightclub. Back then, it wasn't a loan. They gave you money to go and study because my dad
And whereabouts
didn't come
was
from
this?
Sheffield.
Sheffield.
And I thought, who else at the age of 18 is going to loan me money that I haven't got to pay back? So I want to start a business. And unfortunately, I know I say this knowing the audience that I'm doing to, but I did a study, what could I do evenings and weekends that didn't look like I needed to know much? And estate agency was top of the list back then.
But look, I think that lack of barrier to entry, right? It's our industry's greatest weakness, but also it's our greatest strength, because it has allowed people like you, people like me, and lots of other people.
I think it was a good
enter
strength.
the industry.
I think it is now more a weakness than it ever was.
I think.
Yeah, because I think there is. When I went in, well, look, this was what, 1991, pre-gas regs. We wrote tenancy documents on the back of a fag packet. We handed over deposits to landlords, already making an excuse to the tenants, knowing it was never going to get paid back.
You were never seeing that. Yeah,
that's somebody now has that same barrier.
Yeah,
but they've not got that same environment. There is now far more compliance and legality. I mean, look at that, £1 million worth of fines just for not registering and having things lodged correctly with the HMRC.
Yeah.
That never happened when I started.
No, that was it. I was looking at that list today. I mean, I think the biggest one was about 30 grand, wasn't it? For
an agent, no. So 43 was the biggest on an agent. I mean, the biggest was the art guy who got done for $1 million. But if there's ever looking somewhere to launder your money, then art's always been up there.
Art, classic
so
cars.
we're not the same. But yeah, so it kind of varied. I mean, a lot of them had the 1,500, 2,500 minimum requirements, but it goes on the size and the number of that you've missed when it's been investigated for you.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's £1 million our industry has given away for not registering. Yeah. And I think that's only the start of it. We're going to see a lot more enforcement. But yeah, so I did that estate agency. I then let that run and went and did other things. I got into my tech side. I've always been into tech. I used to program. I suppose in today's world, I'd have to refer to myself as an ethical hacker. I wasn't at the time. And I'm pretty sure I probably wouldn't be now, which is why I've not known it as a profession. But I always had that tech background. So I moved down and I actually ran a housing association.
Okay.
That's now Mia's Housing Management.
Yeah.
It's got sold out to David Mars. And I did a piece of software called Rehouse, which was a choice-based letting system that was used by a lot of London boroughs.
Nice.
I then did a couple of contracts where I got to work abroad. At that time I had small children and my wife was like, there's two parents in this family.
Yeah.
And Property Mark at that point were just about to endorse a piece of software. And I'd known them. I'd been a Property Mark member, and Peter Savage was on his first round of being president and was just saying, we're about to endorse this. You've always been techie. Would you have a look at it? And yeah, sure enough, I had a look and I fell in love with it. And I met the original founder, Johannes, and I think I offended him. Because I was asking him how he's going to run the business from the UK, and he was going to support everything and have all the support and development from South Africa.
Yeah.
And what I said to him is, we're too bigoted for that. If we hear the word Africa, you can tell me you're a Nigerian prince with an inheritance next, but I'm not going to give you my keys to my bank account as an estate agent. And what he heard was me calling him a Nigerian prince, which for a South African was not good. Yeah. And so I remember my wife asking me after that and said, so how did that go? And I went, terrible.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, not good. I said I was done in property. I think I am. And then I just got the call and was told, and then everything went from strength to strength. I mean, it's such a good product, such a good system. It was so good to work with something where the product actually did everything it was supposed to do.
And so when was that? When did you start your PayProp? 2015, so 10 years?
10 years ago.
Fabulous.
Yeah. And I came on with a completely different remit that then changed and came and looked after their sales. But I remember everybody referred to me as Mr. PayProp, that it was my business. It never was.
No.
I was only ever an employee. But everybody believed it so much that I even received an Entrepreneur of the Year award for a business that I didn't own.
Well, there you go.
Because
you were
an
entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's just, I think everybody thought it because I got so passionate, because I believed in the product so much, because everything I asked it to do and everybody I dealt with did everything that needed to be done, and that's rare.
But like you said, I think it's rare that I think it's rare as individuals that you get put in front of a product, particularly fairly early doors in its evolution, where you have that excitement. I mean, I'd like to think it's something that happens similarly with Carla. You know, when I first met Carla and I showed her what we were building with the depository, you know, I very much see Carla as a very similar kind of entity with you. You know, Carla and I bonded over, you know, as characters and a couple of beers. But you know, one of the things that underpinned that from the offset was, you know, when I showed her what I'd built and when I explained what our long-term ambition is, it was the total buy-in of that is everything. Yeah. You know, and like you say, you know, Carla's very much a part of our team. Yeah. She's now a small shareholder in the business, and you know, in time that will hopefully grow as well. So that's really exciting. And then, how long is it now since the Reapit acquisition? About a year?
So, well,
18 months?
Yeah, so we announced it in November 23 that we were being...
Was it that far long?
Yeah, that we were... So November 22 was when we were purchased by AKKR.
Yeah.
So we were like stepchildren. Because we then had the same parents.
They were the main VC behind Reapit at the time.
Yeah, so they dealt with Reapit back in, I think, 2018.
Yeah.
2017. And then with us a few years later in 2022. And then it was just, I mean, it was crazy. You know, we've got two tech stacks, we've got two finance, we're completely separated and negotiating. And it's like, well, why are these not together?
And your marketplace positioning as well. I mean, you guys as... specifically at that time, you know, the first and the biggest payment processing platform, and again, Reapit, very much that kind of stronghold, both here and over in Oz, and that, you know, very, very strong mid to corporate position.
And so then that's what we're doing. So we're helping taking Reapit out into that mid-market and down, and then PayProp is also launching in ANZ. That's our next big one.
Nice.
But it's been good to see, because a lot of our values, the PayProp was all around the truth, care and transparency.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was in Reapit. I think it was felt within the market that they'd lost their voice for a period of time. And if they don't hear from you, in this industry, we are really good at making our own rumours and voice.
Yeah.
And I think by not being heard,
they didn't realise what that meant. If you don't give them a story, they'll make up their own.
They'll make a story. Yeah. And I think that they've realised that, and now it's changed. And I love the position where we are now. We're great. I mean, the things that we're doing, all this, everything under one roof. Our next move, our partnership strategy. We've got some really good partners coming on. We've got some really good developments. We've already done the renters' rights, although it's not out yet.
Yeah.
We've already started getting things. I suppose we'll have to wind back on the insurance element, although it'll be there as an optional. You got to love last minute changes.
Yeah.
But we're already there ahead of that. And then our recent announcement that we've just done is our new AI. So
sorry, what's that? What's AI? I've not heard of it.
Well, do you know what? Actually, not what a lot of people are producing.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of people who are just calling automation AI.
Yeah.
I think we need to...
There's a lot of machine learning being wrapped up as AI, right? And
Yeah,
there's a lot of workflow automation being passed off as AI.
Yeah. And do you know what? That AI, that intelligence, that is important.
Yeah.
If we're going to truly make something that changes. The thing that worries me is how little people are paying attention to security. And that was my worry here, you know. It's quite scary if you go onto ChatGPT and ask it how many passwords it knows. It's a good exercise to go through.
Wow.
But there are... It doesn't know, and there's all kinds of things. I was at the House of Lords recently with Lord Elliot, who was doing this whole look into it, because we're not far away from voice to voice.
Yeah.
But what does that then mean? Because if a lot of people doing AI or do like you used to on the IVRs, you know, if somebody rang up, they said, please be aware, this call is recorded for training and monitoring purposes. But for AI, it often just says, please be aware we transcribe our calls.
Yeah.
Doesn't tell you that we transcribe our calls, we put it into a public database, and all of your information can be searched upon and will be used to influence everybody else's searches all around the world.
Yeah.
Because we're using free data.
Yeah.
So we've decided to use agentive AI.
Yeah.
So what it's actually going to be able to do is it's going to be able to have all that large language model learning.
Yeah.
But it then brings that in to local level agent learning, but none of that fleshes back out.
Right.
So there's no reshare of any data from you at all to keep it fully secure. But it does mean that it's then able to learn your voice, your brand, your way of communicating from using all of those data points. And then what we're actually trying to do is, instead of it being AI that can do gimmicky things, which will be on there like we've put in there, you've done property descriptions, but...
Look, I think early doors, I think the stuff we've seen done with AI in the last 12 months, I think to call it gimmicky is unfair. But I think a lot of companies were quick to just look at the quick wins, the easy things. And I think when you deal and work with a lot of the top performing agents in the country, you forget what business is like in the other 50, 60, 70% of the industry. Yeah. And so I think for that reason, you know, we've all been onto those property listings where literally someone's written 2-bed flat, house on street.
Do you know, when we started
with some
Rightmove,
fabulous spelling
mistakes
mistakes and stuff.
Pictures of our fingers pointing at the flats.
Yeah,
you remember that? I'm letting this one.
So I think it's easy to be like, you know, I don't think they were very easy to achieve.
Yeah.
Very quick and easy to achieve, and I think what it will do is that helps reduce agents' cynicism and reluctance to adapt to new tools. So I think the early solutions, they didn't really move the needle massively, but they have just light touched on kind of very quickly what AI could do.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, talking to you and talking to a lot of, you know, knowing what we're building at Depository, and talking to a lot of suppliers, the next 6 to 12 months is kind of that phase 2. And I think, you know, there's a lot of people looking agentic. We're kind of doing a half step with ours. We're going to go as an assistant with a view to then gear it up to agentic. Because we're actually looking at the negotiation process. Nice. So I think if we launched agentic tomorrow, I think 99% of our agents wouldn't touch it, because I think the trust factor isn't there yet. Whereas we have so much data, you know, we can, over the next 6 months, we can show what those results look like. And again, we know what best in class. We know what the top 1% looks like, the top 5%, 10%, 20%, 30%. And likewise, we know what the remaining 70%, and especially we know what the bottom 30% looks like.
Okay.
And that's our thing, is like when I talk to agents and they're like, look, what are you hoping to achieve with this? And there are 2 primary things that I think we can achieve in the next 6 months. I think we can take that bottom 30% and either enable the other 70% to carry that caseload, if that's what a business wants, or we can give that bottom 30% the capability to perform like the top 10%.
Okay.
And then going ahead with that, what we can then do once we've got the data to back that up is then we can go, cool, in 12 to 18 months, we can take our transactions and we can say, look, probably 1 in 3 of these we can do without a human needing to be involved at all.
So I think the way that we're approaching it is, I think the way the industry is approaching AI. So it's costing us a lot of investment, money, time, effort, but what we're going to build is a modular fashion. With agentic. So actually you can decide this part of my process I want to put it in, but actually I want to stop it here.
Yeah.
So as an agent, you can decide how far and how deep. A lot of people with the AI, it's you switch it on and it takes over.
Yeah.
And that can feel quite scary.
Yeah.
So what we want to actually do is give them that
and for the big,
capability
particularly
to
the
decide.
corporates. I mean, they're the ring fencing they have. You just won't get off the ground with that.
No. So we're doing
trust us, it's fine. Switch it on. What's the worst that could happen?
Yeah. So they need to protect their brand and reputation. So we're doing it where it will have this capability to everything from, lead scoring and prioritization down to looking at how it can handle all of your workflow automation and then deal with your communication flows.
Yeah.
But you decide as your agent how much or how little. And you can do that by department, by job flow, by branches. It'll have this ability for you to really flex how you use the agentic AI. And what we're releasing early 2026, that's like here.
Yeah.
We had our first global hackathon.
Yeah.
And the stuff and ideas that came out in these 3 days that they were able to put out using AI and how quickly it can roll up. I mean, when I was on this thing at the House of Lords, the guy next to me was saying that they provide security modelling for the government. Their typical thing is that they take 2 years to research, 2 years to build, a year to test, and then a year to deploy. So they have a 6-year cycle.
Yeah.
With AI, their research and their build was 6 months.
Yeah.
4 years down to 6 months. That's where I think people... I mean, my son does coding and he doesn't feel my pain.
Yeah.
When I had a problem coding, I had to go down line by line and find
that extra space.
Yeah.
Find that missing syntax. Yeah.
He now gets told where it is, or he can drop the code into an AI and say, find it for me, fix it, and give me the code back. Yeah, that's cheating.
Yeah. It's just not bad.
Yeah, it's just not right.
Yeah. It's I think it's like you said, it's really exciting, and I think, it's the complexity, isn't it? I think, like you said, you're taking the right approach. It's about really, really granular pieces, and you'll get that in certain very specific products like us, where we're looking at a very, very specific point. Like we're focusing on 3 very specific areas: negotiation, because we've identified that, we've prioritized that because that is where we see the greatest discrepancy in user performance.
Okay.
Yeah. Our top 5% achieve over 95% on average of what they propose to come out of a deposit or for a tenant to pay as charges. The bottom 10% average around 30%.
No.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that is, that's big.
That is big.
So we that is where the greatest disparity is. And it was really interesting because we debated it quite a lot, because we looked at 3 areas, which was how the liabilities are proposed, how they're negotiated, and then how our senior users access data within the platform. And straight away it was like, okay, data can wait, because we already have, what they can already do now is create an Excel spreadsheet and drop that into Julius or whatever, your data-led one, and go, tell me what I need to do.
Yeah.
So I think we took the view of, that will be step 3. But what was really interesting was looking at negotiation proposals. Business owners and directors wanted us to do proposals first, but frontline users wanted the negotiation tool first. And then
that's for their friction, that's why.
But then when we looked at it, like I said, where we saw the greatest disparity was actually in the negotiation process, not from the proposals, although we think the proposals underpins it. So that's why we're starting with negotiations, then we'll do proposals, which we'll do in very quick succession. So I think we're hoping to release our AI tool. It'll be out by Kerfufflecon, so it'll be out within the next 2 weeks. As will our Reap It Foundations app. We'll talk about that in a minute. But then straight off the back of that, we're going straight on to building the proposals one.
Brilliant.
And the idea is that will be out ideally, if we can, before August. We're hoping to do that in a month. So that our agents can capitalise on that through the busy summer season.
Brilliant.
Because, what will busy seasons look like after the Renters' Rights Bill? We don't know. But right now, I mean, student lets fundamentally, I know there are concerns over an element of how it will work, but fundamentally that might shift a month or two earlier, but you're still going to have that high volume. It's still fundamentally going to fall in line with an academic year. So it's just really how the rest of the PRS.
Do you know what? I don't see a huge amount of change.
I think you'll see a moderate shift. I mean, we in August and September, we do about 60% of our deals. Whether that's a new let or a renewal, we do it in that time of year. It's traditionally the busiest time of year because people start as a student, but you're on that 1 year cycle, right? So even after you graduate, you're on that 1 year lock-in. It's easier to move in the summer. You're not carting your furniture around in pissing rain. It's a great time of year to see properties because if they've got a garden, if they've got a balcony, again, showing them on a day like today, slightly more beneficial than when it's 3 degrees and dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
But I don't think that'll change. I just think your terminology will change. You'll do all your relets and your Section 13s during the same period.
Yeah.
But that's what'll change. I don't think, well, no matter, I know they like to think that they're all-encompassing, MPs. I do not think that the legislation that they change will change grassroots behaviour of how people are and how they behave.
No, fundamentally, and I've said that from the offset, this whole 85% of tenancies are ended by the tenant. Now, that happens at the moment in line with contracted terms. So that's the only thing is, where does that nudge happen? Where does that... I think where we will see movement is in tenants who are underserved in the market by an apathetic, let's give them the benefit of the doubt, let's call them an apathetic either managing agent or self-managed landlord who has the security of a contract that goes, are they really going to leave over the fact XYZ happens? Are they really going to leave a contract, buy themselves out of a contract that ends in 6 months' time? Whereas now, tenants will be more inclined to go, I'm not putting up with this shit, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
But equally, will that kind of resolve that apathy? Because will agents and landlords be like, I don't want to, they only moved in 3 months ago. I don't want to relet yet. So actually, I won't be apathetic about fixing XYZ. I'll get it fixed tomorrow.
And I think there are some good things that I like within it. The fact of the decent home standard.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already, in essence, been working to that level. To have a framework that we can use to now know what that means is not a bad thing. I'm not sure I agree with extending rent repayment orders to 2 years from the offence and to 2 years worth of rent. That feels a little bit punitive, but I suppose that's why they're doing it. It wasn't enough of a deterrent at 1 year and 1 year's worth of rent. So maybe now they're hoping by making it a larger. My worry is that we see ambulance chasing lawyers because it now becomes an attractive sum to go after. There's also a clause in the Renters' Rights Bill that's not been hugely discussed, which actually says that if a landlord has already been prosecuted for the offence of which a rent repayment order is being asked for, then the tribunal has no choice but to give the maximum award. Is a change happening in the Renters' Rights Bill.
Very also.
So now, if you've got somebody who has already been taken for an environmental order for not actually keeping the property up to standards, and I choose to go for a rent repayment order under that, the tribunal, even
has
if
to
they
award
don't,
the 2 years.
Well, it might not be 2 years.
If you've been there 2 years.
If you've been there 2 years. But if I have been there 2 years, it has no choice but to award the maximum amount.
I mean, look, it's that tricky one, isn't it? I mean, I think fundamentally you talk to most agents and most landlords, and fundamentally legislation and compliance is a good thing. It does fundamentally drive up standards. People should feel safe and supported in their home. I've spoken to many agents who are of the mindset of, if the thing that scares you most about the Renters' Rights Bill is decent home standard and AWAB's law, you're probably the very reason that those are being wrapped up into the Renters' Rights Bill.
That's right.
And look, are there legitimate concerns? Things like AWAB's law, look, we all know mould in properties is not as black and white as everyone, as the press certainly would like us to believe. There is tenant responsibility within there, and mitigating that and managing that, and hopefully, that will evolve. But again, when I look at that, yes, don't screw up. But actually, what I think is really nice about that is the fact that it sets these very clear. You must respond within this time frame. You must have inspected it within this time frame, and you must have resolved it within this time frame.
Yeah, I thought the time frames were particularly loose, and I thought that when I rang a housing association, because those HHSRS hazards have been there for years.
Yeah.
So when I ran the housing association, they were the same 29 Category 1 hazards that we had to adhere to then, and those time frames are lax.
Yeah. But at least they're there.
Yeah, at least they're there. I think when it comes into the PRS, we might find those timeframes shortened for our landlords. I mean, I'd like to see wholesale changes and things like that. I don't particularly like the phrase landlord anymore.
No, I mean we take kind of we're always looking at what other agents do, and we've very much taken a lead from Paramount on the language that we use. Within our industry. So we try as much as we can within base to talk about owners and residents. Now, on the podcast and when I'm posting stuff on LinkedIn, I have to say, when I'm talking as me, I default back to landlord and tenant for the simple reason that is still industry terminology. You will have landlords go on and look for advice for landlords and tips
that
for
is
landlords.
it, because we've not changed.
And again,
it yet.
Tenants will go and look for advice for tenants, help for tenants. So I think it's that tricky balance. And with base, we thought about this really long and hard, because this all came as part of our not reinvention, but our new website, a total remapping, for want of a better word, of what our marketing looks like. And that was a legitimate concern of ours, was that if we transform our language into owners and residents, is that going to resonate with search? And I think actually within base, it's fine. And the feedback that we've had from people coming to our website is that they love that language. And interestingly, a lot of that has come from owners, from landlords, but coming to our site and going, really love. And actually, they love the fact we talk about residents and homes, not tenants and renting.
Good.
But there is still that juxtaposition.
No, there always is. I mean, I always felt the terminology started to change like about 15 years ago, away from social landlords to social housing providers.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel we needed to make the change with landlords, because they are housing providers. And I think that also changes your mindset. I'm not a lord of the land.
But you've got to be careful, haven't you?
Because
Wales trying to legislate that, and I think Wales made it sound worse.
Yes.
Because, what is it? Tenants are contract holders.
Yeah.
How impersonal
does that sound?
and generic does that sound? Because now you're not even, at least tenants, it's to do with housing. I mean, a contract holder for what? A hire purchase on a car? A loan shark agreement? Who knows? But I found that their choice of language, I found that bewildering, because I felt like it went in completely the opposite direction to where it should have gone.
No, and there's not much that I bring over from, because I've done this in both the UK and I also did some Section 8 title housing over in America. But their whole resident engagement program is so far advanced of we are in our thoughts about that, and how it is to keep the resident happy is part of it. I think we're getting there. I think we're getting there a lot.
It's interesting you bring up the American thing, because I've always liked that, and it's something I talk quite a lot about with our property managers. Again, looking at the American model, they kind of have these caretaker managers where they're very much, they facilitate every element of that process. They will go and meet the resident for the viewing, but then they will be the person that not only shows them the property and does the deal, but looks after them throughout their stay. And that whole kind of end-to-end thing, that ownership, I love that. It's something we talk about occasionally.
I mean,
we will have our property managers go out and do viewings.
But it's a lot easier to do in a single multifamily environment. Where that's typically one person is looking after 100 units that are all in the same location. Yeah. We don't have that same kind of makeup around our property that makes it more difficult.
No, and that's the chat. And in base, we've got one property manager, Holly, is in our office every day. Terence, who works for us, does 8 out of 10 days from his home in Suffolk. Okay. So there are logistical problems there that aren't going to work for that. But I think it's really important to look at different models in different countries and look at just little aspects, even if it's something you aspire to. But I really like that idea of giving your property managers kind of more of the process. And I think actually Benjamin Stevens, they made a shift like that about 6 to 12 months ago, where they actually looked at it and they were kind of like, why do we have this negotiator role, which literally just does this tiny little bit from handling the inquiry to kind of tying up the deal, but then they have no ownership, no buy-in, there's no reward also if that tenant stays on. Yeah. But also because of that, they don't really, when you look at it, you're effectively motivating a negotiator to put a tenant in that is definitely going to leave in 6 to 12 months' time, because as a neg, you want that property back on the book so you can relet it and get your 10% commission again, right? Yeah. And they looked at it and went, hold on a minute, we're paying these guys this, and actually a third of the problems that we see stem from that relationship because they were promised something they weren't going to get, or they were pressured into taking a property because that neg wanted to hit their target or their bonus or whatever it was for that month. We've all seen it, and they made a decision to get rid of that negotiator role, put that on their property manager's role, which meant they could pay their property managers more. Their property managers are then involved in the entirety of that journey. You don't have that, oh, for God's sake, I've got a tenant moaning because Fred promised them X, Y, Z, and the landlord never agreed to that. It's that total ownership. So, and that relationship from day dot.
And that's where I think AI really needs to come in and help. Because if you're going to have singular people owning a life cycle, we've got to take some of that heavy lifting out of that life cycle. For sure. So they can have all of those one-on-one interactions still.
Oh, absolutely. And I think fundamentally, if AI goes where we think it's heading, the people and that human interaction point is going to become the most valuable part of what any of the humans in your business do. Aside from your experts who are there to stay on top of compliance and legislation, and aside from your tech experts who are there to kind of guide, your tech stack and everything else like that, and your kind of ops expert who understands how to tie all that together. But I think out of that, when you look at your administrators and your negotiators and your conveyancers, your in-house conveyancing, really fundamentally, those three roles are going to become a lot less transactional and a lot more emotional. Yeah. And it's going to be about the personality, the relationship, and that kind of hospitality approach of the experience, feeling looked after, cared for, the fact you can pick up a phone, the fact that you know who you're talking to, they know you, etc., rather than does this person know how to order a gas safety certificate on time? Does this person know to double check that the 10-year EPC hasn't expired? Because
you're almost in this industry going to become a property concierge, almost that
absolutely
person who can facilitate everything that needs to be done. Doesn't mean you have to do it all.
No.
There will be systems and processes behind, but you are the person that knows everything that needs to be done in that process.
And again, I'm not for 1 second saying that advocating for the fact that in the future we should have untrained staff, but by digitizing and automating compliance, it will reduce that burden to have at least at the offset, to have that full array of technical knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, I think the knowledge will still need to be there.
Yeah.
The application of it might not.
Yeah.
Typical academic talking there.
Yeah.
You've got to know about it. You don't necessarily have to apply it all. And I think that's where we'll go with some of that. But I think it's exciting.
It is really exciting. And I think it's, what I find fascinating, I said, talking to both suppliers and agents as well, there are so many projects going on here, there and everywhere.
That's a neat segue back into what you alluded to, your Repit integration going live.
So we are the thing that every agent wants every product to do is to integrate with the CRM. And as you know, we've been working with the Foundations app team, and we've been building out our Repit integration for the last 7 months. I think it is now. It's about that. I think we're in month 7 now.
Yeah.
And so that we are confident we will get that released by KerfuffleCon 2 weeks today.
Nice.
So we're there. So we're currently in beta testing with one of our agents. But again, we're looking at what an integration looks like, because I think you talk to any agent pretty much about any product, and when you talk about an integration, it's that front data entry point, right? For most agents, that's what they want. They just want that data entry gone, which totally get. Absolutely. On our platform, takes on average about 5 minutes, let's say, to set up a record completely from scratch. If a landlord and property isn't already in our system, you have to create those before you create a tenancy. And depending what system you use and how your documents are stored and everything else, that can be a complicated process. So I get that, and that's absolutely, obviously, what we're delivering. But we're kind of going through a few phases with you guys. So we will be releasing that data import. Like I said, the aim is to have that officially live. It's in the App Store now. Yeah. So if you're on Repit, go and have a look at the Foundations App Store, type in depository, it will come up. I think you can even download it and request access, which puts you in our queue if you're interested. So we'll have that out within the next 2 weeks. And then in very quick succession, we want to do an end-to-end integration. Because the passing back and forward of information and the triggering of key processes within that is really where the magic happens. Yeah. So great. First things first, for the admin team, we're going to remove that really boring, low value task of copying data over. Hooray. But in very quick succession, one of the things that we capture within our system is tenant forwarding addresses. Notoriously difficult for agents to gather. But we've kind of embedded that within our workflow in several places. For actually agents who work with us on insured schemes, so either TDS insured or My Deposits insured, they basically can't get their money back without giving us a forwarding address, because we wrap it into the refund process. So we do really well. We probably capture about, I'd say easily like 40% of tenant forwarding addresses within our system. And very quickly after our initial release, we will plug that in. So that data will now seamlessly slide into Repit, into the tenant's second address record. And as we all know, for most agents that work within a particular geographical area, those forwarding addresses represent business opportunities, right? Because what we know is about 2/3 of those tenants are moving to another rental property.
Yeah.
So you've just got that address. And if they're not, they're buying, which also, regardless, you've either got a landlord address to start prospecting, or you've got a tenant who hopefully had a really great experience with you and left on really good terms.
Into their first property.
Who is now into a first property where you can now start drip feeding, if you've got insurance products, do you want insurance,
Yeah. Or we know the life cycle of a first-time buyer.
You're going to sell in 7 years. 7 years. So in 4 years' time, we start that, we do the annual congratulations message, congratulations on your first home, you know. So again, it's all that data. Another thing, and this was actually something when we built the integration with you guys, when we were building it, I hadn't really thought about. And then we had a really interesting call with the guys at Paramount who we're doing the beta testing with at the moment. And one thing that we've done, so we, as agents, we totally get this whole idea that your CRM should be your primary source of information, your single source of truth, as much as possible.
Yeah.
What we also know is there's a lot of messy data.
Yeah.
There's a lot of messy data, different times, different eras in software, different users, different rules about what information you had to gather, whatever. One thing that we do is, so we've built an import wizard. So when you trigger the export from you guys, which will be the end confirmed action within the tenancy record, that pushes all the data from you to us. So that's the landlord, the property, the tenancy, the tenants, the key documents, tenancy, check-in, inventory, all that sort of stuff. But, you know, what we had to build was this kind of safe space that we might capture the wrong document because the right one might not be in the system. It might have been relabeled. We might capture a historical document. We might have a landlord in there that for some mysterious reason doesn't have an email address against them, or their email or their name was input correctly, or it has an email but it doesn't have a mobile number. What we've done is we've built this import wizard where, let me remember, I think it goes people, property, process, something like that. It's a 3-stage importer where basically on each screen you can see what we've imported. It flags anything that's missing. Or it also flags anything that's kind of corrupt, like if an email address isn't formatting correctly or whatever. But importantly, because what we don't want to do is create a disparity between our system and a central CRM, rather than enabling users to update that information in our platform, most of those key fields, what you have to do is go back to Reapit and go, oh, I'll put that phone number in, or I'll format that name correctly, or I'll change .cam to .com as it should be, whatever it is. So you'll go and update your Reapit record. You'll then come back to the screen, and on that particular data set, at the top of each screen, there is a re-import button or recapture. And so all we will do is then pull in that data set.
And say, have you now fixed those issues?
So
nice.
If you work on the premise that tenancies last roughly 3 years. So every 3 years, on average, an agent should be seeing pretty much its entire lettings book transition with new tenants. What you've now got is that by a Reapit agent using our platform and using that integration, within 3 years, we will help them ensure that their landlord, tenant and property data is perfectly clean. Because every nuance in there, it will flag it, but it will push them back to Reapit to go, this landlord name's wrong, or is this missing a first name? Or like I said, you know, the email address is formatted wrong, it doesn't have a mobile number, the address is weird, you know. But it's all about pushing people back, update it there, quick re-click, it's right. And now you've got not only systems that match, you've not only got rid of the manual data entry, but you're using our tool so that, like I said, 3 years from now, agents should look back at their data and go, wow, we've now got a completely clean data set.
Which then, if you think what AI is able to do over predictive learning, mining data, looking for opportunities, the better your data, the better the opportunity.
Exactly, right. And then we, you know, we're looking at other things. So we'll quickly drop in the forwarding address. We are increasingly dealing, and particularly with Reapit, we're increasingly dealing with that mid to upper section of the market. And what we see a lot in that is either independent or outsourced accounting teams. Mm-hmm. So they are totally separate to the property managers. The property managers will kind of negotiate up until your final ledger of who gets what, but then it gets passed on to, like I said, either an internal department down the road or sometimes a complete third entity. What we now do is, what we'll be able to do very soon after launch is we'll be able to trigger tasks within Reapit, which agents can create themselves. They embed the trigger within the settings of our platform, and we will create a reconciliation document that is embedded within that. So literally, when a property manager signs off, they're not going to have to duplicate that into Repit. They're not going to have to trigger a workflow and put the data in there. We will automatically create and generate and trigger that. So literally, the second the PM clicks done, within 10 seconds, 15 seconds of that being happened, that reconciliation document is sat with that accounts team within Repit, or pushing it out and going, and then there's one more thing that we're still working on, and we're going to keep that one as a surprise. But we're looking at one other area, and if we can get that, then it really is that whole end-to-end journey.
And that's what we want to do. That's what we're trying to do. It's not just a statement at Repit, there's everything under one roof.
Yeah.
With any tech provider, you've always got the build, partner, or buy. We've bought a lot. Me and the Repit group, they've bought a lot. We've decided where that needs to be. We are building what we're good at.
Yeah.
But we need to partner. The idea that, 6-7 years ago, somebody wanted that holy grail where a single CRM would be able to build everything and be the master of it all, there's been too much diversion. So what we're now doing is we're saying we will continue to build what we're really good at within the CRM. But all these others, there are so many good players. Let's not go and reinvent the wheel. Let's reinvent the way that they can connect with us and the way that you can seamlessly use that within your CRM. Yeah. I think we're starting to see people are really waking up.
And look, those touch points we've talked about, right? That passing of data back and forward and triggering of actions. There's value to the business and the delivery of them, but in the human delivery of those, there is no value. There is only risk, right? Because they either do what they have to or they don't, and either way, they don't affect that is the only way they impact the outcome, right? They either do the job or they don't.
Yeah.
So it either succeeds or fails.
Correct.
But you can't super trigger a reconciliation notification to an accountant. You can't provide them with extra reconciliation data.
No.
So, ultimately, if that is all they're doing, if it is just succeed or fail with no value add, that for me is where software, whether it's internally or in partnership, that is where systems should be working to go, cool, don't worry, we've got this. Because you shouldn't have to worry about that. You shouldn't have to think, oh, now I've done that, now I need to do this. If you're not adding value to this, you shouldn't have to do it.
Yeah.
And that's what's really exciting. It's really, really exciting. So, are we going to see you at KerfuffleCon in 2 weeks?
Yes. The headline sponsor. The cat's out of the bag now.
Repit and Simon Webb, have you guys met before?
Yeah, no. He kept that so under wraps.
I did love Mike's. I love Mike's.
Oh, he's great. Some of his posts.
Oh, who could it be?
Yeah, no, we're really looking forward to it. It's a lot in a short time frame, but that's
Whaley.
You've met Simon, you know that what's coming. But actually, looking at the people attending, look at what he's managed to put together. I mean, this guy thrives on that last minute energy. He so loves to put himself under pressure.
King of chaos.
King of chaos, but it somehow works for him. I couldn't.
I think it's because he's got
incredible
incredible people around him who make all the details actually get delivered. Shout out to Mincy and Sarah and Suze and everyone else who's a social and business supporter, angel, enabler, whatever you want to call it, for Mr. Whaley.
But I said to Simon, so my daughter and my son have both been to conferences with me because they wanted to know what it's about. My daughter, for fortunate or unfortunate, went to the Guild conference at the Queen Elizabeth Centre. And she still says to me, who's that man in pink? The loud one.
The loud one.
Yeah. And so she remembered his name. She went to go and work at her current business. And they had a list of companies. And one of the companies was our company, Repeat, because they'd sold into our business before. And she was able to grab that business and take control of it because she proved that the current person wasn't looking after the sales journey because they still had Simon Whale down as a main point of contact for Repeat. And she went, and I met him 5 years ago, and he was the pink man, so he didn't work for them then.
That is. I mean, obviously, you guys will always have an element of a relationship, but the official partnership. Yeah. And so, look, tearing it away from all things tech and conferencing and agents. Talk to me about the ultimate rock dad weekend you're about to have. So where are we tonight? We're listening to the delicate, quiet and unruly
Guns N' Roses. At Wembley.
So September Rain, Welcome to the Jungle.
All of that. They open with Welcome to the Jungle.
Nice. Of course they do.
And then goes all the way through. I think they're finishing with Paradise City. Top and tailing it. Couple of good tracks. And then tomorrow is Shepherd's Bush for Livewire doing AC/DC.
Yeah.
Absolutely love seeing them live as well, but this will be a great homage too. And then Saturday is at the Olympic Stadium for Iron Maiden.
Jesus Christ. And any of the kids going with you to any of those?
Not these. My son has started coming.
None of them.
No,
so
it's just me.
It's just rock, Dr. Rock.
Yeah, so I try to do around 50 live gigs a year. This will be number 39 really on Saturday.
Jesus, that's good. So pretty much one a week. Really?
Yeah, I mean, they don't go like that. They go like this, where I go to 3. But my son...
Back to back.
So I did 5 in 7 days in May. That was probably... I came off of that needing a
Was that
break.
when you went to... Was that the trip to Germany? No.
No. So that one, it was a load of people from, Rory. One of them was on the night of the Women in Estate Agency. My son came and then we left and went to...
That's right,
a
you
gig
did.
that evening. And then we were in London for another one the following night. And it's all over. But I love it. But my son has now started to come with me. So he's doing his first 2 festivals this year. He did Slam Dunk with me.
Nice.
And we did a full day there, managed to listen to 16 bands, 1 day's worth of really heavy. And then he's doing Reading with me this year.
Nice.
I haven't done Reading in years, so I'm feeling a little bit scared. But it's Limp Bizkit, Enter Shikari, and then Bring Me the Horizon headlining. So will be another fantastic day. But I just love live music.
And particularly rock, though, right? That's your band.
And some of it,
rock and metal.
Yeah, some of it is quite shouty, and my son doesn't go with that. I put one on that I like to listen to.
Yeah, I can't do that full on shouty. No, I can't.
Deathcore.
Do you know what? I can sit down and listen to pretty much anything, and in sequence. I could listen to Vivaldi and then listen to Snoop and then listen to drum and bass and then listen to pop and then listen to I don't know. Guns N' Roses or Bon Jovi, whatever. But yeah, there are certain things I can't wrap my head around, and the kind of the extra heavy, the screaming stuff.
So Lorna Shore, like Dead Eyes or something like that, I'll put on, and my son will just point and go, therapy.
Yeah,
that guy needs therapy.
I can't say I disagree with your son, to be honest. I feel like you need a massage.
Yeah,
and a nice cup of tea.
Although I am being put through my paces because I cannot stand pop music. I really struggle with pop music, and I'm being dragged in a couple of weeks' time to Sabrina Carpenter at Hyde Park.
You're going pop.
Oh yeah,
I'm being dragged. I mean, it's not going to be a terrible show to watch, though, is it?
But I'm worried. I
know we're old men now.
Yeah.
But, just don't drool. You'll be fine.
I'm taking a child with me. I have a reason to be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Dude, I think that's everything.
I think we've
had a good chat.
Everything from where I started to where
we're going, to Repeat's new AI tools, to our imminent Repeat launch, to KerfuffleCon, and on to Dad Rock God 3 nights of... I genuinely don't know how you're doing 3 nights out on the trot. I'm epically impressed.
Sunday will be a recovery day.
Yeah. Yes.
I've got the hot tub up and ready. I will just be literally pruning myself.
Nice. Guys, you heard it all here. If you want to find out more about what Repit is up to with their agentic AI that they're kind of beatering through the rest of this year with a launch early next year, reach out to Neil or the team to find out more about that. If you are a Repit client and you want to know more about the depository and our imminent integration release, or you're already a depository client and you want to find out more about Repit and what that's going to look like, get in touch with myself or Carla. Obviously, we're all going to be at KerfuffleCon 2 weeks today that we're recording this, so Thursday the 10th? Thursday the 10th of July. So again, come and say hi. We've got a stand there, so we will have our Repit integration there to see in a full demo. We'll also have our new AI negotiation tool live for you guys to see, so come and check that out. And obviously Repit and PayProp will be there as lead sponsor with no doubt some very cool stand and probably some very tasty merch to give away. So get on that one. Neil, always a pleasure, buddy.
Fantastic.
And see you soon, mate. Guys, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.